Have you ever wanted to be a fly on the wall in a conversation between me, Katie Richardson, and one of my VIP clients? Well, today's episode is part two of just that. And for 7 years now, I've been really fortunate to be in some really incredible conversations with amazing, high performing entrepreneurs. And as I have helped them problem solve and find the powerful way forward, every time I leave one of those conversations, I think, where else can they get those kinds of answers? And oftentimes, as I help them see the way forward, they thank me and they say, nobody else is talking about this. And I don't know where else I would get this information. They say things like that. And it always leaves me feeling like there are other people out there who need this incredible perspective. And so I am so grateful to my clients who have agreed to allow us to share some of my coaching sessions with them. So today is actually part two of a client of mine, Chris McMillan. He's got an incredible luxury home services company in Florida. And if you want to listen to the first part, it's my very first call with him. It's an incredible conversation, and you will learn so many things just by listening in on that conversation. And it's episode 90. And today is part two. And what's so interesting is when this conversation happened, I was like, okay, here it is. It's a call that I always know is going to happen someday, and I just don't know when it's going to show up. And it's usually about 30 or 60 days into working together. And what I'm doing with them week after week after week is I'm teaching them powerful principles. I'm showing them how to actually live these principles and implement them. And there's so much nuance to it. And so when they start implementing these things, they start seeing changes very rapidly, and it's fun. It's exciting. They're feeling this huge sense of momentum, and they're able to overcome opposition pretty quickly and easily. And then about 30 or 60 days in, something happens and they start to feel fear. They start to feel significant resistance for the first time since starting to work with me. And they feel embarrassed about it and ashamed. And they're afraid to say something to me about it. And they're worried that I'm going to think less of them. And they believe that they must be doing something wrong because they're experiencing this opposition. And yet that could not be further from the truth. And the reason they're experiencing that opposition is because they're making these moves, and it's because they're living so aligned, and it's part of the process. And so today, it's super relatable what Chris shares in this episode. And, so much is happening in his personal life. He's traveling, he's hanging out with his nieces and nephews, and he's trying to balance the chaos of what's going on in his business and life and the needs of his wife and his family. And so hop in, listen to this episode. At the very least, if you can listen to this in a time and space where you're free of interruptions, free of distractions, and keep asking yourself, what does this mean for me? That's why I'm sharing these episodes, is because, my clients have so generously offered their coaching sessions, their stories, to be a guiding light for you. And so as you're listening to me talk to Chris in this episode, I want you to imagine I'm talking to you. And what would I be saying to you in these kinds of moments? And how does this relate to you? And how can you take what I teach him in this session and start applying it to your life? So hop in, be open, be present, and get ready, buckle up. Sometimes people say working with me is like drinking out of a fire hose. And I'm just looking at the list of things that we covered in this coaching session. And sometimes it can be overwhelming. And so I want to invite you to ask yourself, if you were to have one takeaway from today's episode, from this coaching session, which piece really sticks out to you? And I know we talked a lot about fear, and I'm going to call out a tool that I described to him in the episode, and that is the tool of curiosity. Fear is something that can really take us over and be all consuming. And when we get into a place of fear, we're in that place of resistance. And so the way that you step out of the fear is by utilizing curiosity. It's such a powerful tool. And it's something that all of us are born with. It's innate within us. And I really believe that when Christ talks about being like a little child, this is one of those components that he's talking about. They don't make judgments towards you. Like when a 5-year-old is asking you a question, he's not asking it with judgment behind it. He's not asking it leading to a certain specific answer that he's looking for. And they're free of all of those things. And because they don't attach meaning to things, there's this kind of open space where we can see with clear eyes and be open. And that's when God, life can really teach you powerful lessons. So as I demonstrated to Chris, I'm going to invite you to develop and remember this tool of curiosity. It's a very powerful tool. And it's one that, especially in times of tremendous chaos and complexity and even stress and pressure, if you can move into this place of curiosity, it starts to diffuse a lot of that pressure and that stress. And your eyes become open to possibility that maybe previously you couldn't even consider or couldn't even see because you were in the grip of fear. And fear has us being incongruent. Fear has us in a place of resistance, and it's not aligning us with God and our creator and our maker. And it prevents you from being able to co-create a solution to move forward. So how can you remember the skill set of curiosity that you had as a young child and that school kind of programmed out of you and said, just remember these answers, memorize these dates, and you'll do well. And what's so unfortunate is it kind of programs it out of you, the curiosity. So remember what it's like to be a 3, 4, 5-year-old and to embody this natural, powerful curiosity and bring that curiosity to your situations. And if you can almost like pull out of the situation rather than being in it, be above it and look at it through this frame of curiosity, you'll start to see possibility that previously wasn't clear to you, wasn't there. So how can you diffuse the opposition and that's created by the fear and move into a place of powerful curiosity and begin to create a solution and a path forward?
So thanks for being flexible with me and tuning in today.
Yeah, you are very welcome. Give me an update. How are things going for you?
You're going great. I've been doing my daily power creations, and that's helped me kind of get back on track this week. I did them this morning, and I also been thinking throughout the week a little bit more about the fear stuff that we talked about last time, just being vulnerable and not really to start on the negative or anything, but I think that's something that I want to maybe address, maybe even talk through with you. I don't even know if it's needs to be addressed, but I think, some of the underlying fears that, and I don't want to say it keeps me up at night or anything, but the things that kind of scare me when I think about the long term, or what if I can't sell my company, right? Like for some reason that bugs me because it's important to me. What if I don't achieve my goal of financial success? And what I mean by that is I'm still working now. I mean, I do well, but like, I'd like to not have to work, if you know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it. But, and then, I think the most like the short-term thing that bothers me is what if I'm not successful in this mountain race? And not that I don't think that I will ultimately will be, and those are the 3 things that I wrote down this morning. But I think to an overarching theme of like, why do we cast doubt on ourselves anyway? Because even growing up through athletics and stuff, once you get to a certain point, it's almost like this fear of success creeps in on some level.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is. Is that self-doubt? I guess it's normal. I guess everybody has it, but like, how do you address this or how do you overcome these things? Because there's always been this fear of success at some point, and it creeps into to me at various levels. And those are just the things that, routinely bother me or are on my mind at the moment. But
okay.
So that's really what's on my mind. So
yeah, this is great. And I can speak on this generally.
Yeah.
You did give me 3 good examples though. What if I can't sell my company? What if I don't achieve my financial goals? What if I'm not successful in the mountain race? When is the race, by the way? Or is it, it's like over time?
It's in July. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I'm just trying to be poignant and engaged and getting something out of this. So not just to say, oh, hey, I have fears, but here's 3 examples of my biggest ones, I guess. So how do we address this? How do I process it, or how do I deal with them? Because there's no reason to be afraid of success, but I feel like a lot of people get to this point. Okay, so when I started my digital marketing company a while back, you get to a certain point and then you start avoiding work because you're almost afraid of what's around the corner, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it, but I'm just kind of talking. So
Yeah. So we as human beings are wired for progress.
Okay.
Like everything that you talked about, I want to be able to sell my company, progress. I want to know if I can achieve my financial goals, progress. Will I be successful in the mountain race, progress, right? You're working towards all of these things.
Yeah.
So it's an innate human desire to progress. And this is like a reframe. I believe that life is moving to support you in that progress.
Okay.
Now, in order for there to be progress, there actually has to be something that seems counterintuitive, which is opposition.
Okay.
I mean, you think about just lifting weights in the gym, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have that weight pushing back on you, you're not going to develop the muscle. And so sometimes when fear shows up, we respond to it by pulling back. And that is certainly one way that we can respond to the fear. Mm-hmm. It's almost like trying to lift the weights and like, man, it's too heavy. Set it down, right? And in a way, that's kind of what it's like. And if we go back to life is working in your favor. So if fear and opposition shows up, which oftentimes our mind categorizes as bad, what if you recategorized it as life is teaching me something? And I see fear as a signal from life saying, hey, Katie, pay attention. Because if you can turn fear into your teacher, like you've just discovered a great, I hate using these words, but like hack or secret or trick.
Yeah.
Like when things go right, what do we learn?
Not a lot.
Like almost nothing. It's weird, right? And
right.
So the fear is there as your teacher. There was a time in my life when my kids were, this was like several years ago. Okay. My youngest was like 3-4 years old. That's where they were like, me do it and super defiant.
Yeah.
And that is slow and it takes a lot of time for her to put her own shoes on. Just
right.
Like all those things. And like I kept pushing back on her. Every time she would push on me, I would push back on her. And we were really butting heads. And it was so funny to me because for 3 kids, I had boys and I'd always dreamed of having a girl. And then I had a girl and we were just fighting all the time. And I let that be a signal. Hey, Katie, pay attention. Okay, this is interesting. We're butting heads like 7 times a day. Isn't that interesting? Okay, I'm the parent. I'm trying to make her do things, force, which is
right.
in the non-powerful category, trying to make her do things. And she pushes back and it's super frustrating and inefficient. And I don't have time for this. And I just kept pushing back on her. And I started to make the shift that she was my teacher. And what is she teaching me right now? And all of a sudden, like the need to push back on her and the resistance and the frustration really started to dissipate. And she and I started to get along. Now, it also required me to be creative, artful in my approach as her parent, because it's not like I just like full hands off, like, okay, girl, whatever you want.
Cool.
That doesn't work. And so I had to really double down on, okay, if I'm not going to push back on her, but that needs to be done, what's a different way that I can approach it where it has us aligned and I'm not pushing back against her?
Yeah.
And I'm not really thinking of a very good example right off the top of my head, but I remember this season where I had noticed how frequently I was frustrated with her specifically. And then I made the decision to reframe her and my relationship with her as she was my teacher right now.
The obstacle is the teacher, basically.
Yeah. And my pregnancy with her was very different than the first 3 pregnancies because I had a similar shift. I'd gone from believing I was a victim and this was like my body was being taken over and I just had to sit back and take it and I was going to gain all this weight and have all these problems. And it shifted to I'm actually in control. And what is this teaching me? So let's look at so that's kind of just principally how I approach fear. It's there to teach us something. If you want progress, and Chris, this is when the game gets super fun. There is no finish line here. And there's an opportunity for you to learn another important lesson every day. It's almost like American Treasure or Da Vinci Code, where it's like, you need another piece of the puzzle. And every time you find another key or a piece of the puzzle, then there's like a clue to the next one.
Yeah.
And life can start to feel like this, where you're like, okay, I learned this today and it's so exciting and I'm going to start applying it this way. And then the next day you're like, oh my gosh, and this.
Right.
And it's like this really exciting game.
Yeah.
Where the fear now is your teacher. And we go from resisting the fear, tightening up, stressing up when the fear shows up, to teaching ourselves to calm down, relax. It's teaching me something. What can I learn right now? There's a gift here. There is a gift. And if you extract the gift and you apply it to your life and say, okay, insight alone won't change my reality. I have to put this into action, right? Progress. I have to put this into action. So I'm seeing this thing right now. How can I put this into action today?
Okay, love it.
So you see the reframe?
Yes.
So let's go through some of these more specific ones. What if I can't sell my company? Sometimes it actually is helpful. Sometimes we have fear because something's been undefined and it's unknown, right? It's like a little child, fear of the dark.
And I know that one's sort of ambiguous because there's no roadmap there. I don't have anything written down. Like,
okay.
It's almost a vision of what I want to do, but not necessarily, right?
Yes.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
You're seeing how, so a lot of times fear comes in simply because something is undefined. If it's unknown and that's why we're afraid, then we just need to define it. And then it becomes known. And the opposite is true. Not the opposite. Sometimes it's even helpful to go down the path of, okay, what if I can't sell my company? What does that look like?
Yeah.
And so yesterday I was interviewing this really awesome guy out of London, and it was on negotiation. And oftentimes you hear people say, you have to be willing to walk away. And that's so easy to say, Chris, right? Yeah. So easy to say. Sure. And people say it all the time. But what it doesn't address is the fact that you're a human being who has dreams and desires and hopes and wants. And so oftentimes both parties are going into the negotiation because they want it, right? Yeah. But it's when we become needy and desperate of it and fearful of not getting it, that's when we are disempowered in the negotiation. He said it a different way, and it was so good. He said, before you go into the negotiation, you have to consider the possibility that you might not get that deal. And you have to also research what your other options are. Because if you actually because going into the negotiation, you don't know where it's going to land. And you have to know where your hard stop is. And so if you can say, actually, I've got better options over here, so it's a no for me, I'm walking away. And you can do it from a place of authenticity, like it's real and it's genuine because you researched your other options.
Sure.
So it's kind of similar here. Like, play that out for me. Let's say for whatever reason, you can't sell your company.
Yeah.
Let's define that road, because even that is undefined.
Well, I mean, in its simplest form, I just continue down the path that I'm on now, right? Because I would still do it because it's like what you talked about before. When you ask a question and you give an answer, it just opens up a set of other questions in some cases, right? Which is cool. That's life, right? But if I don't sell it, or if I do sell it, I'm going to have to find something to do. It's not like I can just sit at home and do nothing and rot away anyway. So I would have to open another business. I would have to open another grill company, maybe a different industry altogether. I guess I haven't defined that, right? So that's probably where a lot of this fear lies, is that I haven't even taken time to write down, what does that look like if I do sell? What does it look like if I don't? There's a lot of gray area there because I haven't defined it. Only in my head do I wonder that, or a lot of doubt, I guess, creeps in because I haven't defined it or looked at it or thought about how this gentleman reframed, what happens if I don't get the deal, right?
Yeah.
You got to negotiate from a place of strength. You can't go in just totally desperate and taking any price because, right? I mean, it's worth what it's worth. So
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it seems so counterintuitive. I had a client who her marriage was really struggling, and her fear was, what if I get a divorce?
Yeah.
And I said, you actually need to really look at that and face that as a potential outcome in order to save your marriage.
Yeah.
And it terrified her. She had these sessions of crying and journaling and like fully really coming to accept that that could be a possible outcome. It wasn't what she preferred and wanted.
Right.
But a marriage is between two people, and maybe that's what he chooses.
Sure.
And her marriage is stronger today than
Yeah.
it ever has been before. In fact, I've had 5 clients tell me either they weren't married previously or I've helped them navigate their marriage. Like we're able to navigate it through all these principles that I'm teaching you.
Right.
It strengthens their marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's another wild, crazy example. It seems so counterintuitive. Katie, I'm like, my marriage isn't doing well. And like, what if I got a divorce? And it was like, let's actually look at that. And would you be okay? And how can we look at that in a way that we're no longer needy and desperate of not having that happen? Because that's where you become disempowered and you're not able to have a real, honest conversation with your husband.
Yeah, I think that's important. What you just said, just looking at it in a way that you're not desperate or you're not needy.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go into it with some sort of balance. So this is going to help me. I'm going to have to write all this stuff down. Then I can at least see what it looks like. I can refer to it if I start thinking about it, right? I can look at it.
Totally.
Like, that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Quick question for you. What would happen in your business and life if you could show up powerfully? As a coach to high-performing entrepreneurs, I help intelligent people like you do just that. And if you want to be inspired by people who are getting more done in 90 days than most people do all year, I'm going to invite you to go check out my case studies. The website is now.katierichardsson.com/case study. And the cool thing is we've got so many case studies there. You can find an entrepreneur who's just like you. I've also got a link for you down in the show notes. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah. The other beautiful component of that, Chris, is you're the creator of your life.
Right.
And there are 2 phases of creation. There's first what I'll call spiritual creation, where it doesn't exist in reality yet. It's either just floating around in your mind, or maybe we've mapped it out on paper, but it's not real yet. And then the second phase is the physical creation, where it does exist in reality. And oftentimes we think we can get to the physical creation without doing the first one, which is creating it on paper, essentially, first. And so for you to get an outcome where you sell your company in a way that it like fulfills your hopes and dreams, we've got to create it on paper first.
Yeah.
And say, so you have a desire to sell your company. Tell me more, right? Oh, well, I actually want to sell it for a profit,
right?
For X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If you want X amount of dollars, we have to ensure that we have that value inside of the company. I mean, this is why we've been talking about making you replaceable, right? It's one of those components where we've set up your business to successfully sell at a premium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but that question definitely exists in the spiritual place now and not in the physical. So that's probably, that is my answer.
Yeah. But what I'm also saying is it needs to exist in the spiritual as a very well-defined creation. Like right now it exists in the spiritual as I want to sell my company and that's it. Right. Yeah. That's not something you can hand to somebody and say, go make this happen.
Right.
So we do want to define it to the level where you know exactly what it looks like. Let me share like a really simple example of this. When I started Pudge, I didn't have any financial backing. Right. And I honestly, I didn't even have any savings. Like I was just making money as I went.
Burning and churning, right?
Yes. Yeah. And then when you're paying attorneys, that's like lots and lots of
$300 an hour for what?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. And so like I was starting from nothing and I was literally living on food storage and I was grinding wheat, making 4 loaves of bread a week for the family. We were eating beans and rice. And because I was grinding the wheat, I needed a place to store it. I would grind it on, Monday, and then I would use it all week. I needed to store it somewhere. And I really wanted just like a nice, almost like a Tupperware container for it.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing complicated. They had them at Target and it was way out of my price range.
Yeah.
And in the mornings, I would go for a walk and push the kids in the stroller. In the summer, there were always garage sales. I'm like, wouldn't it be so amazing if I found Tupperware at a garage sale? Like that would just be amazing because I could negotiate my price and I would be able to have a container for my flour. Okay. Spiritual creation. What do you want? I want a Tupperware container. Specifically, I want a Tupperware container that I buy at a garage sale where I can negotiate my price. I made that decision. Chris, it was like literally 2 days later. It's a Friday. I'm walking around the corner and I see a table sticking out towards the sidewalks as I look ahead, and there's a garage sale. What's right on the end of the table, like 2 houses in front of me? It's a stack of Tupperware containers, 3 of them.
Yeah.
Big, smaller, smallest. And I was like, oh my gosh, guess who recognized it as soon as I saw it? I was like, that is mine. And I walked up to him. I said, hey, and it was like in change. I have $3. Would you sell this to me for $3? And they're like, it's yours.
Sold American. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a really simple example, but the same is true on a very large scale. Same is true.
Yeah.
It's got to be defined. It has to even be what you want. Your desire needs to be there.
So defining it and even getting specific about dollar amounts or what that looks like, right?
Yes.
Even if it's not the exact one down the road, but I have to have something in mind that's realistic. So, okay.
Keep in mind all of that, because it's all on paper, it's all changeable. Because that's another place where fear comes in. We're like hesitant to even write down a number because, am I locking myself into this number? No.
Well, I think I've always been hesitant to write down a number because I don't really understand how they're valued. Like, is it valued on your revenue? Is it valued on and I've heard both. Is it valued on profit? Like, where do you get the multiple from to even sell it? So I don't really understand that because I'm getting multiple answers. So, that's all probably part of my fear too, I guess.
And even in a negotiation, you would get multiple answers.
Right.
I would definitely say do some research on a geographically constrained, physical location, service-based business. Yeah. What is sort of an evaluation that you can expect for this kind of a business? Because they're all different. They're all different.
Yeah. And I guess the one thing I do have is our area is literally just booming with growth too. So it's unlimited. So it's not like I'm selling a business in a part of the country where that's not growing or that, that people are moving away from. That also does help me. So can't be bad.
That is very true. I was just talking to my son yesterday who he learned how to wholesale. I think I mentioned this. He learned how to wholesale real estate from my neighbor, and he's been trying to get a deal. He's at college at a tiny, tiny town in Idaho. And he was like, I have searched this whole town and there is nothing here. Yeah. And to your point, it's like the opposite of what you were just describing. It is not booming. He's kind of frustrated. He wants to move to a new city. So you're right. Like you're in a really great.
They're building like 12,000 homes within 2 miles of my house. Like,
wow.
That's one development. I mean, it is just really booming. Like Florida's booming because obviously the low tax and people are moving away from the higher tax places and highly regulated states. So 5 years is going to be quadruple what it is now. It's funny. We used to come visit where I lived and it was nothing. Like,
How long have you guys been there?
So it closed in April of 17. Okay. Almost 6 years. Yeah, 5 to 6 years.
Okay. So we've discussed what if I can't sell my company, that fear. Let's talk about the next one. Yeah. What if I don't achieve my financial goals?
Those are two probably tied together ultimately.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, so I think one can probably help take care of the other, at least writing it out too, defining
what I was just going to say. Right? Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yes. So can you see how fear sets in when we haven't defined what it is that we actually want?
I mean, I feel better even saying it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just existing as random thoughts in my head isn't helping me. So.
Yeah. Yes, but it is. It's
it is now.
You. Yeah. It is helping you. Okay. And then what if I'm not successful in my mountain race? What does success in your mountain race look like?
Finishing.
Okay.
I have that. I have a training program that I'm following. So I think we all just wonder what if sometimes your mind just goes to the worst case scenario. At least mine tended to. So I'm trying to be better about this, but I know we'd spoken before about the fears and writing them down and addressing them. So I'm trying to unclog this part of my brain.
Yeah, which is great and awesome. And keep in mind, because you're wired for progress and because life is moving to support you in that, this never runs out, Chris. There's always another level. No, it never does. Yeah. There's always another level where fear will show up. And in fact, this week I was with a friend. She's the private art tutor of Glenn Beck. We were at his home. She was giving me a tour of his art studio. And she told me the story of how she started helping him. He'd been painting his whole life, but was really frustrated and lacking a lot of skill, she said. And so she made him throw everything out. He had just like cheap paint and cheap brushes. She made him throw it all out and get started. And part of what she noticed is he was just painting what he saw. And she really felt like art is about expressing and sharing what your unique perspective, right? And so she said, Glenn, you're a storyteller. What stories do you want to tell? And what's interesting, because as she said that to me, I immediately felt fear, like on my own behalf. It was like she was asking me, Katie, what stories do you want to tell? I immediately felt fear, and it was physical. My body reacted to it in a place of fear, and my body wanted to hide. And so I've been journaling on it. Like, what am I learning from this? What is this exposing in me? And, growing up, I was the fourth of 6 kids. I was the invisible one, Chris. I was in the middle. I was a good girl who never got in trouble, therefore didn't require a lot of attention from my parents. And I was very invisible. And it's something I've had to work a lot on, like being comfortable, being seen and being vulnerable and even being on stage and on camera. Like I've had to work really hard at it, which might surprise you, but it's because of that, like that initial response, which is fear. And like sharing my unique perspective in that moment, it felt really vulnerable. Isn't that interesting? Like,
yes,
there's always another level. And again, if you can be curious about it rather than resist it. Ooh, okay. We haven't even really talked about curiosity, have we?
No.
Oh my gosh. This is going to become your best friend, because we have a tendency to say things are good or bad, right, wrong.
Yes.
We talked about that. We did talk about this, I think.
Yeah,
right?
we
it
talk
just
about
is
things. They are, and that's definitely helped me, but I haven't really scratched the curious part of that, right?
Okay.
The curiosity part of it. I've been able to not make things good or bad or label them like disaster or great, right? But curious hasn't been.
Yeah. Okay, let me show you how to use curiosity. So that moment that I was with her and I noticed my body reacted in that way that it wanted to hide. And rather than saying, oh, I hate that about myself, or that's embarrassing, I'm going to make sure I don't tell her what I just experienced. Rather than any of those things, you neutralize it and you say, oh, isn't that interesting? My body got afraid. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And by moving into curiosity, you stay in this neutral place, which empowers you to continue to kind of navigate it in a way where you can learn from it. When we shift to the polar ends, we immediately have labeled it.
Yeah.
We've judged it. We've attached meaning to it. It's just instant. And this kind of goes back to that quote from Viktor Frankl. It's free on Audible. Man's Search for Meaning. It's Viktor Frankl. He's inside the concentration camps when he writes this. It's like kind of heavy, but it's like amazing because he survives. And so much of how he survives stems from how he was honestly framing things in his mind. Yeah. And he has this discovery that so much of like mindset and self-development today is based off of this phrase. I'm like having another quote. Okay. In between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies your freedom to choose your response. Lies your freedom to choose your response and your power. So like, that's where your power is. Now, when we have stimulus and response is fear and we believe the fear, it's like there's no space between the stimulus and response. It's just react.
Yes. Fear does react, right?
Yes. What curiosity does is it widens this gap between stimulus and response. It creates that space where you can say, isn't this interesting? My body wanted to hide. So we're not just reacting to it. We're observing, we're noticing through this tool of curiosity. What are you seeing?
I just wrote down fear equals reaction, curiosity equals power.
Chris, I'm going to write that down. That's good.
Which makes sense, because when you're fearful, then you sort of, at least that's for me personally, that's where all my negative thoughts stem from, I think.
Yeah.
Fear of the unknown, fear of who knows what, but it goes into that reactive phase, which I've definitely made a lot of progress coming out of that since I've been working with you. I mean, that's definitely where a lot of, because I would react to things before, and I think it's out of fear and of it not being defined. So this is a light bulb for me. Curiosity for sure. Yeah. If you ever wonder what curiosity looks like, just remember when your niece and nephew were like 4 or 5 years old. That age in particular, they're really good at, like, they're so forgiving, right? They won't, you do something wrong and they're like almost not mad at you. It's just like, Yeah. Ask lots of questions. Yeah. From this neutral place. Sometimes we ask questions, but they're more of like a statement. Like, why am I so stupid? That's not a question. That is a statement. Right. And I was just sharing inside of a group session this week. We were talking about the quality of your outcomes is determined by the quality of the questions that you're asking. And this is how you ask better quality questions. It's actually rooted in curiosity. What do you mean by that? So your quality of your outcomes depends on the quality of questions you're asking. Can you give me some example? Yeah. Let's use that previous example. Like, why am I so stupid? Let's follow that through. When I say that to myself, what does my brain do? I mean, defensive. Yeah. Reaction. Okay. Probably goes to, obviously in a negative headspace if that's the frame that you're in. So yeah. You know what else it does? It finds examples. Your brain is like your servant. And it's like, oh, I can show you why. And it hands you all of the examples. That's true. So if that's what I'm saying to my brain as the servant, it has to show me the examples. It's going to support me in the questions that I'm asking. So sometimes, this is a really good one, my design process. In my design process, as you're building and prototyping and creating and tweaking and doing multiple iterations, what can start to happen over time is your product starts to almost become like this Frankenstein. It's like, man, it does the things that I want it to do, but it's a little wonky and it looks weird and disjointed. And so what you want to do at that phase is you want to start asking a new question. Usually what people will say, like, what else can I make it do? And that's really where it becomes this Frankenstein. It's not great at any one thing, but it does 17 things all at once. You're like, I just need you to do this one thing really well. Right. And so what I do in that process is I ask a new question, which is, what else can I take away? And it's about stripping away the noise and the excess and the extra. Because what I want is the core essence and the reason for this product existing. I want that to rise to the surface. And it's like editing a book, right? If you can say something in fewer words, it's more profound, it's more impactful. When we say it when we're like this, fear equals reaction, curiosity equals power. That was like a light bulb moment and super impactful. If we said that in half a page, it's not very impactful. And so this question of what else can I take away? It's kind of an example of that. Another question that sometimes people ask, if things are really complicated and hard and laborious and stressful, you can ask a question like, if this was easy, what would that look like? And your brain is like, oh, let me help you find the answers. And it goes and it finds the answers for you. And it has you seeing a totally new perspective. It lets go of the assumptions that you were making that were blinding you from seeing how to innovate. Yeah. I like that. Those are just a few examples. Yeah. Easy what it looked like. We talked about that before, but yes, that's a great way to frame it, where your brain will give you other answers and you're not necessarily operating in where you're stuck from, but what's possible. Yeah. And so keep in mind, we want to ask these questions from this place of curiosity. Yeah. Because curiosity equals power. I love it, Chris. Love it.
So let's hit the last one really quick.
Okay.
What if I'm not successful in my mountain race?
I'm going to do everything to prepare for it. I think I have a roadmap for it. There's just always things you haven't done with things you haven't experienced. There's always some curiosity and doubt that creep in. I mean, it's going to be hard. So that's not an easy accomplishment. So I think that's probably where it stems from.
Okay. Tell me about, you said you've been doing your daily power creation. What specifically is that for you?
I typically have been writing down I've written down who do I want to be on the page. It's in the morning, right? And is that
so
a better husband? Is that a better father to my dog? Is that a better uncle to my niece and nephew? And then, ways, how do I do that? Through love, through light, through understanding, through being present, engagement, things like that. And I don't know, I lost my train of thought there. I was going to tell you something else.
That's okay. Okay. Love it. And you're writing those out. You're saying them. Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah, I write them out, and then
That's so good.
I list 3 objectives in the morning, and then how am I going to do those? Even if that's being a better leader, right? It's how I'm specific as to how I'm going to do those through better engagement, through reinforcement or understanding, right? Like I'm trying to not just write them and be wishy-washy and these are great, right? How am I going to get there? So I'm trying to use the power terms to get me to these places too. So yeah, that's what it looks like.
So good.
Every day.
I love it. And then your exercise, you're doing your program. What does that usually look like on a daily basis?
Well, we're only 2 weeks in, so it's not crazy. Like today's a rest day, thank God. Tomorrow, because I really don't want to work out today. Tomorrow is a 4-mile jog. Sunday is like a 40-minute cross train, but it'll get a lot heavier. I've seen my wife do this. She did it last year. So it will become more and more as you move along. So
awesome. Yeah. And what about your eating and your diet that you're putting in your body?
I've been pretty good, except for yesterday. Ballpark food is not health food, but I've already made up my mind today that I'm just not going to eat ballpark food today. So it is what it is. I mean, I'm like, I can't evolve. I'm just not the guy who can eat great 7 days a week. Like if I have a day or two, I'm good. That's how I operate. Just better that way. Yeah. Yeah. So live life.
Yeah.
What the hell? I had a salad.
There's balance.
Yeah.
There's balance for sure. Yeah. Okay. I'm curious. This is the point where some of my clients, they have family members or team members or friends who are like, something's different about you. Have you experienced anything like that?
No, I don't think so. I haven't had anybody ask me about it. I think my wife has probably noticed, but she hasn't said much. She's always interested in what we talked about, but she's also been gone a ton for work. So I haven't spent a ton of time around her the last 6 weeks, but I feel different. I mean, I know I'm approaching things different. My relationships with certain people are better in my life because of, a lot of these principles we've worked on. So I'm sure that people are noticing, but they haven't said it, sort of thing.
Yeah, it'll come.
I know. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it'll come.
I feel really good about the progress I'm making and excited about where I'm going. So that's important to me.
So good.
You're
awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for listening. I am sitting here so curious to know, what is your greatest takeaway from today's episode? We talked about a lot of things, and my hope is something in particular is really popping up for you. And if you heard my message in the middle of today's episode and you're wondering, hey, Katie, how can you help me get more done in the next 90 days than most people do all year? I'm going to invite you to go to that website, now.katierichardson.com/case study. I have 8 incredible VIP clients who have been so generous to share their stories of the problems that they were facing when they first met me and what they have been able to do because of the formulas, the systems, the processes that I have taught them as they have learned this art of showing up powerfully in their business. So go find the entrepreneur who's most like you, who's going to inspire you to see new possibility. And if you so feel inclined, I'm going to invite you to go to the next page where you're going to see a 6-minute video. And I show you the secret behind the work that I'm doing with these incredible entrepreneurs. It might surprise you. So go watch that video. And then if you feel so inclined, fill out an application, because you and I will hop on the phone and we'll have one of the most impactful conversations you have potentially ever had in your life. I've had a client say, Katie, that call was priceless. And I was like, cool. Can you at least name a price? And he said, at least it was worth $10,000. So you have an opportunity to qualify for that if you fill out an application, if you qualify and meet the minimum requirements. And please, by all means, keep listening. I'll see you in the next episode and keep being awesome.